Chapter 1. A Misunderstanding Among the Stars. Jason Aldridge was used to working in tight, noisy spaces surrounded by complex machinery. He was a skilled mechanic, one of the best on the Celestia, a state-of-the-art intergalactic research vessel that served as a bridge between human and alien technology. It wasn't glamorous work, but Jason had always found comfort in the hum of machines and the click of tools in his hands. It was predictable, unlike the strange and ever-evolving relationships he had with the various alien species aboard the ship. One such species, the Zilithians, was known for their unmatched curiosity and an almost childlike fascination with human technology. Among them was Zalara, a particularly inquisitive Zilithian, who had taken an interest in Jason's work. Zalara's appearance was nothing short of striking. She was tall, standing well over 6 feet, with smooth, shimmering silver skin that seemed to glow under the ship's artificial lights. Her eyes were large and luminescent, an intense violet color that seemed to pierce through anyone she looked at. Though humanoid in shape, she had delicate, elongated fingers, and her slender form gave her an ethereal grace that many on the ship found captivating. Jason, however, had learned long ago that beauty on an alien scale often came with confusing customs and interactions. It was a quiet afternoon in the engineering bay when Zalara approached him. Jason was busy adjusting a set of coolant lines on one of the ship's auxiliary engines when he heard the soft click of her footsteps. Jason, Zalara's voice was melodic, but there was always a sense of wide-eyed wonder in her tone. "I've heard you're quite skilled with your hands. I have a request." Jason turned, wiping his hands on his already oil-stained jumpsuit, and gave her a curious look. "What can I do for you, Zalara?" Her glowing violet eyes flickered with excitement. "I've observed you working with many strange devices aboard the ship, particularly that one." She pointed to a hoverbike parked at the far end of the bay, its sleek design almost hidden among the more utilitarian tools and equipment. "I've seen humans sit on it, placing something between their legs while the machine moves beneath them. It appears intriguing." Jason blinked, not quite sure if he was hearing her correctly. "You mean the hoverbike? You want me to show you how to ride it?" Zalara nodded eagerly, her silver skin catching the light as she moved. "Yes. I wish to experience the sensation for myself. I have been told that it is a thrilling experience when the machine vibrates and propels itself forward." Jason felt his face flush, unsure if Zalara fully understood the implications of what she was saying. The Zilithians were a highly advanced species, but their understanding of human customs and technology was still in its infancy. They often took things quite literally, and their innocence could lead to some awkward situations. "Well, it's not exactly as exciting as it sounds," Jason said, trying to suppress a grin. "I mean, it's just a vehicle. You sit on it and steer. It's not dash. But you place that thing between your legs, yes?" Zalara interrupted, pointing directly at the hoverbike's seat. "Isn't that how it works?" Jason rubbed the back of his neck, trying to find the right words. "Yes, technically. The seat goes between your legs, but that's just how you sit on it to control the bike. It's not really about the, placement." Zalara tilted her head in that curious way she always did when she was trying to understand something. "I see. So, will you demonstrate it for me? I wish to feel the vibrations and the speed." Jason sighed, realizing there was no way around this. "All right," he said, walking over to the hoverbike. "I'll show you how it works. Just try to remember it's a machine, not a dash." Before he could finish his sentence, Zalara had already moved toward the bike, her long, slender fingers tracing its contours with fascination. "How do I get on?" she asked. Jason chuckled under his breath. This was going to be interesting. He mounted the hoverbike, explaining the basic controls to Zalara as he did. "So, you just sit like this," he said, positioning himself on the seat. "You grip the handlebars here, and your legs go on either side." Zalara watched with wide eyes, nodding as if absorbing every detail. "Fascinating. And the machine vibrates as it moves, correct?" Jason nodded. "Yeah, but it's just the engine. Nothing more." "Show me," she said, her voice almost breathless with anticipation. With a sigh, Jason activated the hoverbike's engine. The machine hummed to life, vibrating softly beneath him. He revved the throttle gently, causing the bike to hover a few inches above the ground. Zalara stepped closer, her eyes widening in awe at the sight of the floating machine. "This is incredible," she exclaimed, leaning in to feel the vibrations from the engine. "The energy it emits. It's unlike anything we have on Zalithia." Jason couldn't help but laugh. "It's just a hoverbike, Zalara. It's not that special." But Zalara wasn't listening. Her attention was fully on the machine now, and her curiosity had only deepened. "May I try it?" Jason hesitated for a moment. The hoverbike wasn't exactly designed for alien physiology, and he wasn't sure how Zalara's long limbs and delicate frame would handle it. But she looked so eager, and he didn't want to disappoint her. "All right," he said, stepping off the bike. "But let me show you how to balance first." Zalara's smile widened as she positioned herself on the bike, her silver skin shimmering in the low light of the bay. She tried to mimic Jason's posture, her legs on either side of the seat, but her long limbs made it awkward. She shifted uncomfortably, trying to find a balance. "Is this correct?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Jason stifled a laugh. "Yeah, close enough. Now, just grip the handlebars and dash." But before he could finish, Zalara accidentally twisted the throttle. The hoverbike shot forward, nearly knocking Jason off his feet as it zoomed across the bay with Zalara clinging to it for dear life. "Wait, slow down," Jason shouted, running after her. "I don't know how." Zalara's panicked voice echoed through the bay as the hoverbike careened toward a stack of crates. Jason's heart raced as he sprinted after the bike. This was definitely not how he had planned to spend his afternoon. Chapter 2. Crashing into Understanding. Jason sprinted across the engineering bay, watching helplessly as Zalara struggled to control the hoverbike. The sleek machine darted wildly, nearly crashing into walls and equipment. Her panicked yelps echoed through the large space, but her grip on the handlebars seemed like the only thing preventing her from being thrown off. "Zalara, let go of the throttle," Jason shouted, waving his arms frantically. "I don't know how," she cried, the hoverbike zigzagging unpredictably. Jason reached for a nearby Thule small remote meant to disable malfunctioning machinery. He quickly activated it, sending a signal to cut the power to the bike. The hoverbike sputtered before slowly losing altitude and dropping back to the ground with a soft thud. Zalara let out a sigh of relief, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of exhilaration and terror. Jason jogged up to her, panting and slightly out of breath. "You okay?" he asked, trying to catch his breath while assessing the damage. Zalara dismounted clumsily, her long limbs making it awkward to slide off the bike. "I am unharmed," she said, brushing her silver hair from her face. "But that was far more intense than I anticipated. How do humans manage to control such devices so effortlessly?" Jason chuckled, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. "Well, it takes some practice. I didn't expect you to gun the throttle like that." Zalara looked down at the hoverbike with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "I was overconfident. I believed I could handle the machine with ease, but I clearly lacked the experience." Jason noticed a small dent on one of the crates the hoverbike had brushed against, but other than that, no major damage seemed to be done. "Don't worry about it. You did fine for a first try. I've seen worse from humans." Zalara's violet eyes brightened at his words. "Truly? Perhaps I am not as incompetent as I feared." Jason smiled. "Nah, you just need to take it slow. We can try again, but this time, I'll walk you through it step by step. Deal?" Zalara tilted her head, her curious expression returning. "Deal," she said, though her gaze lingered on Jason. "Humans truly are fascinating. Your relationship with technology is unique. On Zalithia, we do not operate machines in such a direct way. It's almost as if you form a bond with your tools, merging your body with them." Jason raised an eyebrow. "A bond? I guess you could say that. We get pretty attached to our tech sometimes. But it's more about understanding how it works, not just using it." Zalara stepped closer, her glowing eyes studying Jason intently. "I wish to understand humans better. I have been assigned to this ship to observe your species, but I have only scratched the surface. There is so much complexity to your behavior." Jason shifted uncomfortably, unsure where this was going. "Well, I'm just a mechanic. Nothing too complex about me. But you understand the machines that keep this vessel running," Zalara continued, her voice soft but insistent. "Without you, the Celestia would cease to function. That makes you integral to its survival, does it not? Jason blinked, caught off guard by her directness. I mean, I guess you could put it that way, but the ship's full of people who do their part. I'm just one of many. Zalara's eyes seemed to glow brighter as she took another step toward him. Perhaps, but I sense there is more to humans than meets the eye. Your adaptability, your resourcefulness. It is unlike any other species I have encountered. Jason felt a sudden warmth rising in his cheeks as Zalara's intense gaze held his. He wasn't used to this kind of attention, especially not from an alien as striking as Zalara. Well, I think we all adapt in our own ways. It's just part of survival. Zalara nodded slowly, her gaze lingering on him for a moment longer before she finally stepped back. I wish to learn more from you, Jason. Not just about machines, but about your people. Will you teach me? Jason cleared his throat, trying to shake off the awkward tension. Sure, Zalara. I'd be happy to help, but let's take it one step at a time, starting with mastering the hoverbike. Zalara smiled, her violet eyes twinkling. Agreed. I shall follow your lead, Jason. Chapter 3. A Ride to Remember. Life aboard the Celestia was full of routine and repetition, but for Jason Aldridge, the human mechanic who had spent years fixing interstellar ships, it was just the way he liked it. The steady hum of the engines, the rhythmic clank of his tools, and the predictability of working on machinery always put him at ease. But ever since Zalara, the inquisitive Zalithian, had taken a special interest in him and his work, his days had been anything but ordinary. Zalara had become a fixture in Jason's daily life aboard the ship. Her boundless curiosity about humans, particularly their technology and culture, made every interaction with her a unique experience. She would spend hours watching Jason work, asking questions that ranged from the intricacies of plasma conduits to the oddest aspects of human behavior. Her fascination with human customs, however, was what often led to the most awkward and sometimes humorous situations. One particular day in the engineering bay, Zalara approached Jason with the same intensity that had become her trademark. She stood tall, her luminescent skin shimmering in the dim lighting, her violet eyes wide with curiosity. Jason, she began, her voice soft yet carrying an unmistakable sense of urgency. I have been observing human interactions more closely, and I am perplexed by something I've noticed. Jason, who was busy adjusting the ship's coolant regulators, wiped his hands on a rag and gave her a curious look. What's on your mind this time, Zalara? Zalara took a step closer, her movements graceful and fluid, like those of a dancer. I have seen humans engage in a form of physical contact that seems to carry great emotional significance. It is called a hug, I believe. Jason froze for a moment, caught off guard by the question. He wasn't sure how to explain something as simple and yet deeply personal as a hug to someone who had no context for it. Yeah, a hug is pretty common among humans. It's a way of showing affection, comfort, or support. Zalara nodded thoughtfully, her eyes never leaving Jason's face. I have seen humans do this often, even in public settings. But in Zalithian culture, physical contact is rare, reserved for only the most intimate rituals. I do not fully understand why humans are so comfortable with it. Can you demonstrate it for me? Jason's face reddened slightly at the request. It wasn't that Zalara was trying to be inappropriate, her fascination was purely academic, but there was something about the idea of hugging an alien that felt, well, awkward. You want me to hug you? Yes, Zalara replied earnestly, her eyes wide and filled with genuine curiosity. I wish to understand this aspect of human behavior. You have been teaching me about your technology and your culture, but I believe that physical interaction is equally important to understanding humans. Jason shifted uncomfortably, glancing around the engineering bay as if someone might be watching. I mean, I guess I could show you, but it's just a hug. It's not that complicated. Zalara stepped closer, her tall figure looming over Jason slightly. To you, it may not seem complicated, but to me, it is something entirely foreign. Please, Jason, I wish to experience it. Jason sighed, realizing there was no getting out of this one. All right, fine, but just don't make this weird, okay? Zalara's face lit up with excitement, though Jason could see she was trying to maintain her composure. He took a step toward her and hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to approach the situation. Zalara's sleek, Silver skin shimmered faintly in the artificial light, and her elongated limbs gave her an otherworldly grace that made the act of hugging her feel almost surreal. "Okay," Jason muttered, stepping closer to Zalara. "So, a hug is pretty simple. You just wrap your arms around the other person like this." He carefully extended his arms, wrapping them around Zalara's torso. Her body was cool to the touch, and Jason noticed the faint shimmer of her skin beneath his hands. Zalara remained still for a moment, her large violet eyes blinking in surprise as Jason gently embraced her. "This is unusual," Zalara whispered, her voice soft and filled with wonder. "Your body radiates warmth. I did not expect this sensation." Jason chuckled awkwardly, trying to ignore how strange the situation felt. "Yeah, humans are warm-blooded. It's normal for us." Zalara slowly raised her own arms, awkwardly placing them around Jason's back. Her movements were tentative, as though she were unsure of what to do with her hands. She tightened her grip slightly, mimicking what she had observed in humans. For a brief moment, the two stood there in silence, the sound of the ship's engines humming softly in the background. "How does it feel?" Jason asked, his voice sounding more nervous than he intended. Zalara closed her eyes, her expression one of deep contemplation. "It is different. The warmth is not unpleasant. It is a strange sensation, but I can see why humans might find this comforting." Jason slowly released her, stepping back and giving her space. "Yeah, it's not just about the physical sensation. It's about emotional connection. A hug can make someone feel better, like they're not alone." Zalara opened her eyes, her glowing violet gaze locking onto Jason's. "I understand. It is a way of conveying support without words, a form of nonverbal communication that strengthens bonds between individuals." "Exactly," Jason said, feeling a bit more at ease now that the hug was over. "It's not something we think about too much. It's just a part of how we interact." Zalara nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your species places great value on physical closeness, I see. It is fascinating how something so simple can carry so much meaning." Jason smiled. "Yeah, I guess it is. You don't really think about it until someone like you asks about it." As they returned to their work, Zalara's curiosity didn't fade. She continued to ask Jason about human customs, particularly those involving physical and emotional connections. She wanted to understand everything. Why humans held hands, why they kissed, and why they valued touch so much. Jason found himself explaining things he had never really thought about before, things that were so ingrained in human culture that he had taken them for granted. In the following days, their conversations became more personal. Zalara's questions moved from human technology and mechanics to human emotions and relationships. Jason was surprised at how comfortable he had become talking to her about such topics. Despite being from entirely different species, they had formed a bond over their shared curiosity and the time they spent together. One afternoon, after Zalara had mastered the hoverbike and they had finished repairing one of the ship's malfunctioning thrusters, she approached Jason with another question, one that would once again catch him off guard. "Jason," Zalara said, her voice soft and contemplative, "I have been thinking about the concept of intimacy among humans." Jason nearly dropped the wrench he was holding. "Intimacy?" "Yes," Zalara replied, her violet eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Humans seem to place great importance on physical and emotional intimacy, particularly in their relationships. I wish to understand this better." Jason cleared his throat, suddenly feeling very uncomfortable. Intimacy is? Well, it's kind of a private thing. It's not something people talk about casually." Zalara nodded, her expression serious. "I understand that it is private, but I believe it is an essential part of human relationships. It is not something we Zalithians practice in the same way, but I wish to learn." Jason rubbed the back of his neck, unsure of how to proceed. "Well, it's a lot more complicated than just hugging. Intimacy is about trust, vulnerability, and emotions. It's not something you can just demonstrate." Zalara's gaze softened. "I see. Emotions are deeply intertwined with human interactions, much more so than with Zalithians. Your people feel deeply, and that is reflected in the way you connect with one another." Jason nodded slowly, relieved that Zalara seemed to understand, at least in part. "Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Human relationships are complicated because they're emotional. It's not just about the physical stuff." Zalara smiled, a rare and delicate expression on her usually stoic face. "Thank you, Jason, for helping me understand. I appreciate your patience in answering all of my questions." Jason chuckled, feeling the tension finally ease. "Hey, no problem. It's been interesting for me too. You make me think about things in ways I never have before." Zalara's eyes gleamed with warmth as she looked at him. "I believe that is why we have formed such a strong bond. You have taught me much about humans, and in turn, I hope I have shown you a new perspective." Jason smiled, feeling a strange sense of connection with the alien woman standing before him. Despite their differences, they had formed a unique bond, a friendship born out of curiosity and mutual respect. As they continued their work on the Celestia, Jason couldn't help but feel that, in a way, Zalara had taught him just as much about himself as he had taught her about humans. Chapter 4. Between Curiosity and Connection. Days turned into weeks aboard the Celestia, and the bond between Jason and Zalara deepened with each passing moment. What had begun as an innocent curiosity on Zalara's part about human technology, behavior, and emotions had blossomed into a unique and profound connection between two beings from vastly different worlds. Jason had come to look forward to their conversations and shared moments in the engineering bay. The Zalithian's relentless curiosity never ceased to amaze him, and in turn, Jason found himself questioning things about his own humanity that he had always taken for granted. One day, after their shift had ended, Zalara approached Jason with a look of determination that he recognized all too well. She had something on her mind. "Jason," she said softly, her violet eyes fixed on his, "there is something I must discuss with you. It has been on my mind for some time now, and I can no longer ignore it." Jason looked up from the panel he was repairing, a mix of curiosity and apprehension stirring within him. "What's up, Zalara?" She took a deep breath, her usually graceful movements betraying a hint of hesitation. "I have learned much from you about human emotions, about how you express your feelings through physical contact, and how you value relationships. But there is one thing I still do not fully understand." Jason set down his tools, sensing the gravity of her words. "Go on." Zalara stepped closer, her shimmering silver skin reflecting the soft lights of the engineering bay. "I have come to realize that our interactions, our bond, have grown deeper than mere curiosity or friendship. There is something between us, something I cannot fully explain. I feel drawn to you, Jason." Jason's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a sudden rush of emotions he hadn't expected. He had grown close to Zalara, but hearing her say those words out loud stirred something inside him. He wasn't sure if it was the unfamiliarity of the situation, or if he, too, had developed feelings for her. Jason started, but Zalara interrupted gently. "Please, let me finish," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not know if these feelings are what humans call love, or if they are merely a manifestation of my fascination with you and your species. But I wish to understand them. I wish to understand us." Jason felt his chest tighten. He had never expected his time aboard the Celestia to lead to this connection with an alien who not only shared his passion for discovery but had also, in her own way, come to care for him on a level deeper than he could have anticipated. "I've thought about this too, Zalara," Jason said quietly, gathering his thoughts. "I didn't realize how much I enjoyed spending time with you until recently. It's been different, but in a good way. You've made me see things from a new perspective, and I think I've done the same for you." Zalara nodded, her glowing eyes locked onto his. "Yes, you have shown me what it means to feel, to connect in a way I never thought possible. But I must ask, Jason, what is this feeling between us? Is it love?" Jason exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Love's a tricky thing. It's not just one feeling. It's a whole mix of emotions. I don't know if what we're feeling is love, Zalara, but I do know that I care about you. A lot." Zalara's expression softened. "Caring is the foundation of all relationships, is it not? Perhaps that is enough for now." Jason nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Yeah, maybe it is." For a moment, they stood there in silence, the hum of the ship's engines the only sound between them. It was as if the universe had paused, allowing them to bask in the quiet connection they had formed. Then, breaking the silence, Zalara stepped closer, her tall frame now directly in front of Jason. "Jason, there is something else I wish to experience. I have learned much from you, But there is one human custom I have not yet understood fully. Jason raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she was referring to. What's that? Zalara hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching his as if trying to gauge his reaction. A kiss. Jason's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't expected this, hadn't anticipated that their bond would lead to such a request. Kissing, like so many other human customs, was a deeply personal and intimate act, something he had taken for granted. But to Zalara, it was yet another mystery, another human behavior that she longed to understand. Jason stammered, feeling his heart race. Zalara's voice was calm, almost soothing. I have observed humans kissing many times. It seems to be an expression of deep affection and sometimes love. I wish to understand it, Jason, but only if you are comfortable. Jason swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had shared so much with Zalara already, guiding her through human customs and emotions, but this felt like uncharted territory. And yet, as he stood there, looking into her glowing violet eyes, he realized that part of him wanted to share this with her. It wasn't just about satisfying her curiosity anymore. It was about acknowledging the connection they had built together. Okay, Jason said softly, stepping closer to Zalara. But just follow my lead, all right? Zalara nodded, her eyes never leaving his. I trust you, Jason. Jason took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He reached out, gently placing his hands on Zalara's shoulders. Her cool skin felt familiar under his touch now, no longer alien, but part of the bond they had formed. Slowly, he leaned in, his heart pounding in his chest. Zalara remained still, her eyes wide and unblinking as Jason's lips gently brushed against hers. The sensation was unlike anything either of them had experienced. For Jason, it was a kiss, a simple act of affection that he had shared with others before. But with Zalara, it felt different. There was a quiet intensity to it, as if their connection transcended the physical act itself. For Zalara, it was an entirely new experience, a strange and unfamiliar sensation that sent ripples through her body. When Jason pulled away, he could see the wonder in Zalara's eyes. That was extraordinary, Zalara whispered, her voice filled with awe. I felt connected to you in a way I cannot fully describe. Jason smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. Yeah, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's what a kiss is all about. It's more than just physical, it's about the connection you share with someone. Zalara's gaze softened, and she placed a hand gently on Jason's cheek. Thank you, Jason. You have shown me so much. I am grateful for everything we have shared. Jason placed his hand over hers, feeling the weight of their bond in that simple gesture. I'm grateful too, Zalara. You've taught me just as much, maybe more. For the rest of their time aboard the Celestia, Jason and Zalara continued to explore their connection, navigating the complexities of their emotions and their growing bond. What had started as curiosity had become something far more profound, something neither of them could have anticipated. They were two beings from different worlds, but together, they had found a new way to connect through trust, through understanding, and through the simple act of caring for one another. In the vastness of space, amidst the stars and the unknown, Jason and Zalara had discovered something truly extraordinary. That no matter how different two people or two species might be, there is always the possibility of connection. And in that connection, they had found something worth holding on to.